C'est mon père, ça me fait bien tiens. Tu me fais dire non kotu, era one radio. C'est mon père, tu me fais bien tiens. Tu me fais dire non kotu, era one radio. Oh, ayum pam chuma, asam pam chuma.
Kosuanati era one radio empenyini say yensoma na motenten yesoma banyasafo era one radio yedin sem anumuaye ebrem.
Right, good evening, Era One Radio listeners and viewers all over the world. It's another Thursday, and of course, every Thursday means we meet here for divine connection. This is where divinity meets humanity. And as somebody rightly said, pray as if it all depends on God, and work as if everything depends on you. You are watching us live from Facebook and YouTube, also on Modern Ghana Radio. On behalf of my crew and the Era One team, I want to bring you greetings and, of course, to welcome you to our studios. Tonight, we are looking at the power of unity. We're going back to our study, but then we're going to take it from a different angle, dealing with internal and external conflicts. The number to call in is 240-280-2633. It hasn't changed. And if you want to text, which I encourage you to do, it's 510-931-0946. Again, we are broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, and Modern Ghana Radio. Well, I have my two able learned smart gentlemen right here in the persons of Reverend Robert, also known as Nisaba, the Bukom chief. And I also have Uncle Max Wagden also here, who is broadcasting from our studios in Ghana. Gentlemen, you are welcome tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Boison.
Thank you, Dr. Boison.
All right. Uncle Max, any updates from the homeland?
Well, there continues to be the developments in especially the cathedral space and in the opposition space, where the parliamentary leaders have been relieved of their duties and a new set of people have been brought in, much to the displeasure of some of the youth members of the NDC, who apparently attacked the deputy minority leader when he made this announcement at a rally in Tamale. So things are happening. I think it's a good example of externalities leading to internal conflict within the body. They're having to sort themselves out as to what's the best way forward to meet the 2024 elections.
All right, I think Uncle Max is rightly said. I mean, he's introduced our text already. I mean, our subject. We're going to deal with the internal and external conflict, so it's going to be fireworks tonight. Nisaban, do you have any updates for us? Any birthday shouts you want to give out to anybody? You're welcome.
Not that I know of, except that there is an interesting development here in the U.S. 5 Memphis police officers have been charged with murder for the beating of a black motorist.
Ty.
And Ty Nichols. But Dr. Boison, the interesting thing is all these police officers are black.
That is ironic.
Ty Nichols
is black.
Yes, sir. So
wow.
Look at the speed involved in charging black police officers.
Wow.
As against white police officers. Now that's the interesting
rapidity. Yeah, that's what we call B on B, black on black.
You getting me? Yeah. So black police officers commit atrocities against a black citizen, swift justice. White police officers commit the same thing against a black motorist, feet dragging. So yes, for once, I mean, the police are being held for the violence, unnecessary violence, but the color, the optics of the whole thing is what is stinking. But that's all I can say. So if anybody thinks racism is dead, think again. Yeah, think again.
I think it's taking a different shape, like you said. If we were to be white on black, it would take years for them to even decide when they're going to even arraign court or whatever it is. But I mean, and black on black, 5 guys on. Anyway, that is a different story.
But Memphis is a black majority city, so it's not surprising. But this is Tennessee. You getting me? It's not it's not local laws that are being used. It's state law. So it's amazing. I mean, for me, that's what I said. Okay, wow. When was the last time Tennessee was this swift?
Exactly.
In bringing culprits to book, police wrongdoing. But that's good. Let's see what happens next.
Well, I hope they continue with that. We can continue with the rapidity and the swiftness of, condemning when it comes to other people too. Anyway, well, let me just take my jingle and then we'll continue. Thank you for the updates. We'll be back in a sec.
Chimafidi non kotu era one radio. Chimafidi non kotu era one radio. Oh, ayum pankuma, asam pankuma, era pankuma, era one.
Just live on Era One Radio, broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, and Modern Ghana Radio. Tonight we are looking at, or kind of revisiting our topic, but then with a different twist. We are looking at the power of unity or unity of purpose, and we're going to deal with internal and external conflicts. If you want to call in, it's 240-280-2633. And this is a teaching platform. This is where we take away all the brainwashes. I know some people have been too much brainwashed, whether when you were growing up or the kind of church you attended. There's been too much brainwashing. So this platform, we are trying to take away all the brainwashing, let you unlearn what you've learned and learn new ideology and principles for your life. All right, so we'll be looking at Genesis chapter 11. Of course, that's the basis of our study or presentation. We take our source from the Bible, and then we find out how that aligns to our contemporary life. So with the permission of my able bodies here, I'll read just for those who are joining us to refresh us on Genesis chapter 11, 1 through 9, and then we'll take it from there. All right, so it says, and the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. 3. And they said one to another, go to, let us make break, and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth. 5. And the Lord came down, God himself came down, figuratively or metaphorically, whatever it is, to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and thus they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. 7. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. 9. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth. We've done the stakeholder, the subject, the theme, so I don't want us to go back, but I will encourage you to go back to Facebook or YouTube and put in your Era One Radio Divine Connection, and you can pull the script and refresh yourself. So because of time, you're going to jump straight ahead. All right. So as I said, we are looking at the power of unity, the power of purpose, with a twist on internal and external conflicts. All right. Well, today I think for the bonus point, I'll let Elisabeth take this first question. Pastor Kron, I know you've mentioned it before. I mean, just in passing, but now we want to look at it in detail concerning the various conflicts. We have one, the relational conflict, the situational, the cosmic, and the inner conflict. I believe today we'll have time for two of you to actually go deeper and teach us on a 3-credit hour lesson, what this means and how we're going to apply them to our contemporary times. You can go ahead, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Boison.
You're welcome.
Well, it's refreshing to be back. Conflict in literature, not conflict in life. Conflict in life actually is more like a struggle, okay, with a tinge of violence involved. But conflict is a technical term in literature, and it has to do with the sort of forces that characters deal with in real life or in readings in literature. And for one to really understand conflict, one has to go back to what we did last week with respect to the plot. What we said was that the plot of a story, and for anything to constitute plot, it must be an event or an action, a decision, what have you, that the character performs in order to help that character to overcome a situation, a problem, or a complication. Now, often the situation that the character overcomes is where conflict is also observed. So in this particular test we are dealing with, when we look at the events the characters here performed, we see they are journeying from the east, finding a plain in the land of Shinar and settling there, and then deciding to build a city and a tower whose top may reach unto heaven. Then we see God coming down, verifying for himself what the children of men had done. And then he decided that he must confound the language of the children of men and then scattering them. The way to go about it is, what were the problem or what conflict did the characters, the people, what sort of conflict confronted them for which they had to journey from the east? What sort of conflict confronted them when they settled in the plain of Shinar? What sort of conflict confronted them for which they had to build the tower, make a name for themselves, build a city? So this is how plot and conflict go together. So we have different types of conflicts.
as Dr. Boison, you rightly said, we have what we call the internal and external. Those are the two major divisions of conflict. External conflict is a force that is confronting the character that is outside the character. The force is outside the character, external to the character. Internal, on the other hand, internal conflict, on the other hand, is a force that is opposing the character, but that force is coming from within the character. You getting me? And so when we come here, what force or what conflict did the people encounter for which they had to build a tower and what have you? What was it? Now, the force that confronted them here was the nature of a plane. The plane lacks natural protections. Therefore, the force or the conflict that faced them was external to them. The conflict was presented by the nature of the terrain.
Environment, okay.
So, that type of conflict will be an external conflict, and we call it situational conflict. Now, what sort of conflict may have compelled them to journey from the east? From everything we are looking at, it appears they may have experienced some sort of, call it, struggle with another group, because the reason they wanted to build a city and a tower, they said, so that we will not be scattered. So what caused them to be scattered in the east, for which they undertook this journey? Because most likely that conflict was with another group. That conflict was also an external conflict, but because it was with a people, it will be called relational conflict.
Okay. All right. Guys, take notes. This is deep. Okay.
And then you come to God as a character, right? God, why did he scatter the people? Well, what was God's problem? What was the force? What was the force that confronted God? And the point is, what we must, Dr. Boison, somebody will say, why are you treating God like you treat human beings? No, God is a character in this story.
That's true.
So he had a will, he had a desire, he had intentions.
He was a stakeholder.
Was standing. What was what did God want here? God wanted his earth to be filled by people. And here was this group of people who had to fill the earth, saying, we want to stay in the same place. So God's problem was that his earth will not be filled because these people had decided that they were not going to be scattered, they would rather stay in the same place. So God had a problem. And that problem was that his earth was going to remain unoccupied. So that was God's conflict. It was external to God. You getting me?
Wow.
So here, because it was God against man, in this case, the people, it will be cosmic conflict. Because, again, the people wanted to stay in the same place. God wanted his earth filled. From the angle of the people, this was an external conflict with a deity. You getting me?
So you can't win.
Well, That deity was external to them. That is, again,
So another
cosmic
conflict.
Now, the problem with internal, let's sum it up. It is very easy for a character, and for that matter, you and myself, to be able to overcome external conflict easily. Easily, even if the conflict is in the form of a cosmic conflict, because we have the case of Israel Jacob, later to be called Israel, in the book of Genesis chapter 2, where God fought him, and God himself said, you have fought against man, you have wrestled with man and God and man, and you have prevailed. So it is easy for you, it is possible for a character, an individual like you and me, to overcome an external conflict. But it is not easy to overcome an internal conflict. Why? Because the fight, therefore, in an external conflict, the fight is between you and you.
Yeah, that's what in medical terms, medical technology, we call autoimmune. Auto. Your own cells are fighting against you.
Against each other. Who wins? Can you win? When you fight yourself, you dish out one of your hefty blows and it lands on your face. Who wins? That's a quick explanation. Then we can go into details. So over to you, Dr.
Awesome. Thank you. That was very classic. I hope our listeners and readers are taking those, because as I keep saying, you can't find this in any textbook. Uncle Max, I know you are very itching to say something. Add your sweet talk to it. Just, sum it up.
Thank you, Dr. Boison.
Welcome.
What I'd like to point out is the nature of the conflicts that we encounter internally, as well as the idea that we have an autoimmune situation when we enter conflict. This latter arises from the idea that we are made in the image of God. We are made imago Dei. So there is a component of God within us that guides us to have a sense of what is right and what is wrong. What fits and what doesn't fit. And unfortunately, we find that circumstances often conspire to bring about opposing considerations to what we think we should do. And basically, they fall into three groups. One is what we desire, which in the best of worlds would be identical with what God desires for us. The second is what we fear, which we should not entertain at all, because we should be operating from a place of love and fearlessness, a place of love and faith that God has our back. But those are internal, the fear and the desire. Those are the two most powerful motivations for humanity. Then there's the third party vector, which turns up as a duty or obligation to someone else or to something. And sometimes that duty or obligation is what leads to a conflict, because we are compromised by what we feel we need to do and maybe what we think we ought to do, because the two don't match. Or to put it, in a very simple example would be that you make a commitment to go to a meeting at 2:00, and then at 1:00, your partner calls up and says, I have an emergency. Can you come and deal with this emergency for me? And there's no way you're going to be able to deal with that emergency in 1 hour and make your 2:00 meeting. So your obligations to your partner suddenly bring about a conflict with the obligation to the other party with whom you are going to have a meeting. So this plays out very frequently in the busy lives that we lead today, and where the people in this story are concerned, they had a certain desire to make themselves comfortable. Unfortunately, that desire was contrary to the third-party obligation that they had to God, who incidentally is playing two roles in this kind of scenario, because one, he's external and he comes down, but secondly, he's also embedded in everybody. So they knew that they shouldn't be settling, they should be moving on. But the desire for not being dispersed, I suppose, and maybe being comfortable and so on, overcame that internal drive that said they should move on and populate the world. So these are the realities that we face from time to time. Now, there's another aspect to do with the nature of stories, and which is that essentially there are only two kinds of stories. Where one is where a stranger comes to town, and the presence of this stranger causes all kinds of confusion amongst the people who are in the town, and it leads to conflicts which hopefully gets resolved at some point. The second kind of story is where the hero leaves town because of some whatever motivating factor. He feels he or she needs to go on a quest, and the story then follows his adventures in his quest. So with this particular story, we have both events taking place, where the people arrive at a particular spot and they decide, right, this is where we're going to make our town. And then this stranger called God turns up and says, no, I don't like what's going on here. So he brings about a miscommunication paradigm. And then everybody suddenly cannot abide, understand his neighbor. Yeah. And so basically they are compelled to move apart. They become heroes again, who leave town, who leave the city that they were building in order to go and find peace somewhere else. It's a very, very interesting story, this.
Sure. It is. Thank you very much. This is a high-level tutorial on education. As I keep saying, these two men should be teaching a dissertation class, because I mean, I've read the scripture, the Tower of Babel, but I never even considered the conflict of interest, conflict with yourself, fighting yourself. But I think God placed a bit of himself in us, and that thing is called conscience. Sometimes you do something and you realize you are fighting against yourself. There's something that is fighting you. Realize that whatever you are doing, you wish you could stop, but something was fighting you, and we say there's a conscience that even tells you that what you are doing is wrong, but sometimes we ignore it. And it gets to a point where God keeps, reminding us and speaking to us through our conscience. We ignore it, and it gets to a point that I believe God stops. And that's when we get what we call the seared conscience. Now, whatever you do is good for you. Nobody is controlling again because you think you are yourself. Anyway, we'll continue. And before we do, let me take a quick message, and then I will look at verse 7, and we'll take it from there. All right, we'll come back.
Chimafidi non kotu era one radio. Samupe jumpe bietia. Chimafidi non kotu era one radio. Oh, ayum pamchuma. Chintu asam pamchuma. Chintu egratum chuma. Era one, yebo numpankua.
Era One Radio. We are broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube, and also Modern Ghana Radio. Well, this is the show where divinity meets humanity, and I'm just the host, Charles Boison. And this show is produced and directed by three of us. So we are our own co-producers. And our studio manager, Dr. Setutu, is always behind us, giving us the force and the strength to go ahead. Well, I want us to look at verse 7. And King James uses the phrase go to. Sometimes I want to use other verses, but my Niece Laban says, no, our textbook is King James. So whatever I read, I have to come back to King James. It says go to. But other versions will tell you, come on, come, let's agree, let's talk together, come, let's go down. That is God talking. So, of course, when you say let's go, it can never be one person. There's no way that plural phrase will, describe one person. So when the phrase says let's go, then which means it's more than one person. And theologians believe it's God the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, as well as maybe he was referring to the angels and all who were present. Let's go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other. So that's a form of communication. And we have said that unity is power. When we come together to do a thing, there is strength in numbers and there's unity. But sometimes we have to actually consider the motive behind that unity. You might be united to go and do anything, but if the motive is wrong, then that is where God will come and fight you. So anytime you want to gang up, you want to do something, ask yourself, what is the motive? Is this something that the Imago Dei is going to be behind you? Like, for instance, I don't want to use this example, but sometimes in my own conscience, I say, when we look at General 6, was it something that was a good motive? Anyway, that is politics. I'll not go there. But well, like I was saying in verse 7, it's a form of communication. So, gentlemen, let me ask this question. When the people's communication is broken down, it's like we all speak English, and then at a point, our dialect is messed up. We don't understand anybody. The only thing we can do is missing language or sign language or whatever it is. We are using your fingers, and sometimes it's not everybody who understands your right hand, what you are trying to say, except those who have done the language and understand. So this was a form of communication that God had to come and disturb it. It's like still water that is just there running deep, and then a body falls into it and ripples are produced and it's all scattered. So I see this as a form of communication. And so my question is, has foreign culture, education, maybe religion, hampered the growth of any community? Let me just use example, Ghana or Africa. Because it's like we had our own communication. Of course, we had our various dialects. And then we had the foreigners come in, they brought us new religion, education, everything. May I say, did that actually affect our way of living? Uncle Max, you can go first.
Well, I think very, very much so. And if you recall, the passage talks about language and it talks about speech as separate things. And I think we need to look at the intervention of the colonial powers in that context also, where they brought their own language, but they also brought diverse speeches. What most people will understand what language means. You speak Ga, or you speak Fanti, or you speak French, or you speak English, and so on. So this is a set of sounds and grammar and vocabulary that links the various sounds to give them meaning. So language has to be something that is commonly shared amongst people and understood as a verbal form of communication. Speech, on the other hand, is a little bit deeper, I think, and really refers to the expression of what is in one's mind. What is in one's mind. So you can use different languages to deliver what is in your mind. And when you're talking about unity, what is most important is not the language you're speaking. It is what is in your mind and whether it is in concordance with everybody else's thinking. So what foreign cultures did when they came, one, they brought a different language and they said, right now, we want to disturb the patterns of your thinking a little bit. So you have to learn our language because we have the guns and we are demanding taxes from you. And if you don't comply, things will not go well for you. So we were forced to learn foreign languages. That of itself had an impact on the way we think and the way we behave, because that language also came with a culture, a set of cultural paradigms and patterns, which we were also forced to adopt. And in many cases, it was inimical to our own culture, or the continuation of our culture and our worldview and the relationships we had with others within our community. So because of the changes in language and the new ideas which the foreigners brought, some of which were adopted at different rates by different people within the community, it also led to strife and misunderstanding within the community. So basically, we started to get very dispersed, and we lost the unity that we used to have before the foreigners came to town, before the strangers came to town. And I think this process is captured very well in Chinua Achebe's book, Things Fall Apart, where Okonkwo and his friends saw what was happening within that community and how things were getting full of friction, because there are different factions that suddenly got created. And they failed, they no longer saw eye to eye. They didn't speak the same speech any longer. So definitely we have been affected by the arrival of strangers in our midst who did not mean us well. It's not always strangers will bring bad tidings. Sometimes they will come and they will deliver uplift and help and so on to the community. But these particular strangers did not come with good intent. On balance. I'm not saying everybody was on balance.
There's nothing free, so if somebody is bringing you something, there might be some ulterior motive behind. They said they brought the guns, they gave us the Bible, and they took out some stuff anyway. Nisaba, thank you very much, Uncle Mas. That is, awesome. That is beautiful. Nisaba, do you want to rejoin that? Any contribution?
Well, yeah. I mean, again, the use of verse 1, language and speech, and I agree completely, wholly. That was a brilliant exposition. The difference between language and speech. Speech actually is more of the thought pattern, the mind, what the content. And then language is the means of delivering the content of the mind. So language gives expression to thoughts. And the interesting thing is, thoughts actually are not, call it boundless. Thoughts actually are generated within a context, a setting. The realities you face in your environment can actually influence the sort of thoughts that inhabit your mind. And so the language will give the expression to the thoughts that have been informed by the realities of the locality or the environment. Now, here was a case, our language had developed. Our reality had shaped our culture. So the patterns of our thoughts had taken on a certain form. It had almost calcified. And so we have that, call it a near feature, near realization of what is in verse 1. When I spoke, the next person understood me because the person attached the same meanings to the same words or sounds I used. And because we lived in a community with a common destiny, if I expressed something by way of an existential reality to the next person, because that person also lived in that community, our minds can actually come together to forge a common purpose and therefore a common course of action. Now, here was the case. Christianity had been introduced. That Christianity used language to literally denigrate everything in our society, our religion, our concept of God, our concept of community, our concept of achievement, everything.
It's negative.
Negative. Now, they introduced their language, which was known to only a few people. And they elevated that language to the extent that if you knew it, you necessarily were placed on a higher pedestal.
That's true.
So let's look at it. You had the traditional authorities before the coming of the
Europeans,
foreigners with their foreign religion and their foreign culture. Now, nobody took that language and mastered it, and therefore was promoted, put on a higher pedestal. Now that person had become the equal of the traditional authority. So who spoke for whom? You getting me? Who took instruction from whom? This was the sort of knife. In fact, that was what Obiarika said in Things Fall Apart. Obiarika when the district commissioner came and Okonkwo had committed suicide, he had hanged himself, and Obiarika said, listen, when you people came, we accepted you. But now you've put a knife.
Dagger.
And the problem is our own children, our own kinsmen have joined your ways. So if we go against you, we'll end up fighting our own kinsmen. And that's where things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loose upon the world. That is what is in this text. You getting me? All of a sudden, God comes down. And when he says he confounded their language, he introduced different languages. Because at the end of the day, each person could talk. It wasn't as if nobody could talk there. They didn't become deaf. You getting me? They all could speak. But when they spoke, nobody understood each other. And Dr. Boison, I'll give you an interesting example. Way back in 1996, I was the network engineer for the DC Superior Court. And an interesting thing happened. And it had to do with a couple that was divorcing. And the interesting thing was that the woman's complaint was that the man never appreciated her cooking. And the man's complaint was that the woman never took him serious. What was the issue? It so happened that the man was British.
Oh, okay.
The wife, American. And the whole problem centered on the use of the word quite, Quite.
Okay, quite. Okay.
Quite good in America is excellent. Quite good in Britain,
It's nothing.
not so. You get me?
It's a matter of semantics, huh?
So the man will go to town and buy something nice for the wife, and will say, "Honey, how do you like this?" The woman will say, "Oh, quite nice." This American saying, "Excellent." The British husband, with a British understanding, understood it as disapproval.
Below the belt, low, huh?
So each time he went to town, he wanted to buy something better, he received the same disapproval as British. You getting me? Quite. And then the woman will cook. And then, "Honey, how do you like my cooking?" The husband, being British, say, "Quite good." Saying, which actually meant, your cooking could actually
Needs improvement.
you getting me? But the American wife, taking that for a compliment, will cook the same food. So even the same language, but different meanings attached to the same word.
Wow.
Now take it and bring it back to our system, where the languages were, completely different. And you begin to see the damage. And the amazing thing is, Dr. Boison, the government that was established was not based on our local language. It was based on the foreign language.
That's true.
And that foreign language actually also developed in a different setting.
Yeah, no wonder we had problems with people going to Saito and others going to the preparatory international schools. I mean, when preparatory school guys came back and were speaking English, the Saitos were hiding behind cupboards and they couldn't, their inferiority complex stepped in because we had elevated the white man's language.
And you see, the unfortunate problem with that, because this is my field. As a historian, this was something like that. The issue, one of the major and the most disastrous and destructive outcome of this is that if somebody had mastery over English, we necessarily equated that to intelligence.
That's true.
So if you have somebody with mathematical ability, but not well-versed or that didn't have that mastery over the English language as the other person, that other person may be in actual fact intellectually deficient compared to the mathematician. But because he could rattle the language, he necessarily progressed.
Wow.
You getting me? And so these are some of the problems. And we are looking at a test like this, and we see an interesting development. You read verse 9, the Bible said they stopped building and went their ways because their languages had changed. They could not communicate. Even if they were making the same sounds, the meaning attached to the sound had changed from one person to the other. So, yes, this is a test that informs us about how colonialism has worked and wreaked havoc in our system.
Quite unfortunate. But the unfortunate thing is that when these guys had their language scattered or dispersed, Bible doesn't talk about any interrogation, any discussion with the higher powers. They just scattered. Well, I don't know whether there was any missing link anywhere. But on the face value, they stopped building. That pushed me to the question of when your modus operandi or modus operandi methods, your system of working is dispersed, do you just stop right there? How do you even know? In this case, the master himself, the creator of the universe, the one who orchestrated everything, dispersed them, and they didn't even have the ability to even argue with the man that, you know what, this is our intention. We said we were going to build this tower to heaven, although it was metaphoric. You dispersed us. There was no negotiation. There was no sit down to discuss it. All right, so Uncle Max, let me put this question to you. I don't know whether you've seen this video that just circulated this week. And, you know, sometimes I'm curious and I listen to some of these Ghanaian videos and I listen on Too Much TV. There was a guy, a so-called prophet. He himself admitted that he's not very schooled. He's not very schooled in terms of education. So even when the host mentioned something like, finally, give me your last, he said, what is finally? Anyway, this guy was saying that somebody like Kennedy Japan, the parliamentarian, would never, he said, never, cannot ever become a president of Ghana, which to me was a little bit harsh. I mean,
Kumchacha?
No, not Kumchacha, no. I mean, I forgot the guy's name. He was in Burgundy, you know, he said he's a prophet from the central region. I forgot his name. I mean, I know Uncle Max might have seen it, or maybe I'll get the name. But he said categorically on the show that Kennedy Japan can never become a president. And that was something that actually hit me. I'm not turning this to a platform, but, you know, hey, everything is possible. We have to educate our people. So for somebody to go on the national TV and say that, okay, one particular person cannot become a president because there is no presidency in his family. He used the term so he doesn't have, and I wonder, Ghana, is there anybody born that says, okay, you are a presidential material or you come from a presidential home? I don't see. If you talk about monarchy, we talk about Prince Charles and William and those people, they are the monarchical system where you can say somebody is born into that, you know, a high level of you must become a monarch. But then when it comes to presidential, you know, for a prophet to say that, I'm not, you know, arguing against him, but to me, it's, Uncle Max, I want you to address this issue in terms of the fact that Pastor Akron mentioned it, you know, that when your system is disturbed, how do you fight a system like that? Or isn't it even right to do so? I mean, was the guy right to come and tell someone that you can never, ever? That is his point of view. But to me, it doesn't sit well. Just educate me on that.
Well, I cannot pretend to know what was in this prophet's mind.
Okay.
But when people make such categorical statements, often they are being paid or encouraged to make these statements in order to put a certain idea out into the community and to discourage people from following the object of their complaint or their derision. I think we have a problem in this country, which is that we don't generally differentiate between leaders and politicians. We assume that those who get on a podium and they make speeches and so on are necessarily going to be leaders, or they're going to be good leaders because they are able to speak. And unfortunately, there is no connection between ability to speak and ability to have a vision that is coherent, that is cogent and works, and the ability to inspire others to follow that vision to make it a reality. And indeed, good leadership, and you know, the Bible is full of examples of servant leadership. Good leadership tends to be quiet. It tends to be self-effacing. And what it tends to do is to empower people to be able to do and deliver more than they would have thought themselves capable of doing. And that is what produces the buy-in, from the community and from people generally, in order to ensure that whatever achievements are made are sustainable, that they are owned by the community, and that therefore they take root and they last. That is a model of leadership which unfortunately, since Nkrumah, we have not seen in this country. Except perhaps, I think General Champong may have come a bit close because he also, but he motivated people, and for the first time, I mean, Ghana was actually self-sufficient in food. We had food surpluses. You know, since then it's been downhill. So yes, people will get up and make prophecies about this person and that person and so on. But if you don't know, if you have not got leadership ability yourself, I don't see how you can easily identify who's going to be a good leader and who isn't. And so at the moment, everything in this country, virtually everything, boils down to money. And we don't ask, where did the money come from? So long as you've got money, we assume that therefore you can pay me something to vote for you.
Wow.
And it's become very, it's been, political system has been monetized.
Thank you very much.
Race to the bottom. That's it.
To the bottom. Well,
I don't know if that answers your question.
It did.
It's a very big question.
Sometimes I want us to reflect on some of these contemporary. I mean, I don't want us to just come here and be only spiritual, so heavenly bound and not be earthly useful. I mean, we have to mix and, address some of these issues. Nisaba, I know where you stand, but then in your closing remarks or whatever you want to say, what has not been said that you want to add, we got 3 minutes.
I heard Kumchacha actually make
wow.
And he gave his reason. He said on one occasion, actually on many occasions, the Kennedy Agipon had called the prophets thieves, and that he didn't believe in the church and what have you. Now, all of a sudden, now that he's nursing this presidential ambition, he's going to churches. Last week he was at Usu Bempes.
Yeah, man. And he gave a nice donation of 50,000.
The other time he was at Ajiansari's church, because we know that the Christian community is a political constituency also in Ghana.
That's true.
So now if he could make his peace with the Christian community, maybe. So this is where Kumchacha was coming from. but coming back to this test, Dr. Boison, next week when we meet, maybe what we have to look at, how does God oppose us? And the question that flows from a test like this is, did the people know the will of God? These are, you getting me? So the question becomes, I want to do something. Let's say I want to go to school. I want to start a church. I have done due diligence. I've looked at everything, and I have decided I'm going to do it. But do I know what God's intention for me? What his purposes for me? You getting me? So it's one of the takeaways of this test. Even when you've checked all the boxes concerning an issue, you must know there is an entity out there that you need to get his mind concerning the issue. Because it's not explicit that these people knew what God has said. It's not stated anywhere. Though one could imply, one could dig here and there and present a credible argument. But let's face it, this happened at least 100 to 170 years after the flood.
That's true.
You getting me? So quite some time had passed. You getting me? So that's what I want to take away. For me, this is where prayer comes in. When you've done due diligence, you also want to seek the mind of God concerning your plans. Because the good book of Proverbs chapter 3, I believe, says, many are the devices in a man's heart.
But it's God.
But it is
God who brings them to pass.
You understand? It is God's will that will stand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate you guys very much. And thanks for all this wisdom. Like I said, we have to make allowance for a dissertation for you guys to go and teach, because this is very, very deep. I mean, anytime I come here, although I'm hosting, I am learning so much that you guys have no idea. Thank you very much for availing yourself and dishing out all this knowledge. Uncle Max, Reverend Isaba, thank you very much. And we'll meet again next week. Until then, be good. And like I said, pray as if everything depends on God, and work as if everything depends on you. The gentlemen have said it. We have learned from them. There's power in unity. But what is the motive behind that gathering that we are gathering? Is it unto God? Have you found out, like they said, the will of God concerning all this? I'm sure they didn't even pray. They didn't do any worship or intercession to find out, God, you are Kokroko, you are big, we want to build and come and see you. Their motive was wrong. So when your motive is wrong, no matter how together you are, God will do escate. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and I will meet you again next week. I'll just continue with a couple of ads, and then Uncle Max, I know it's 2 minutes after midnight in Ghana. Go and get some rest. We'll see you by Miss tomorrow. All right, bye-bye.
Sure. Okay.
Chimafidi non kotu era one radio. Jumpe dietia. Chimafidi non kotu era one radio. Oh, ayum pamtua. Chintu, asam pamtua. Chintu, ekratum kuma. Era one, yebo yung pamtua.
Asampaetia, Obayansa Puso Munia one kana sam. Tema to some kakre wa supreme. What's up?
tropical green tea. The Fumigio Herbal Tea by Glucose Care International is a nutritious drink and a natural blood glucose reducer. Gymnema plant, the active ingredient in the Fumigio Herbal Tea, suppresses the absorption of carbohydrate ingested from your diet. The green tea content in the Fumigio Herbal Tea promotes rejuvenation of dead cells, detoxification of your system, stimulates the pancreas to release insulin, and improves metabolism. Drinking 1 sachet of Fumigio Herbal Tea after meals prevents the rise in blood sugar levels, suppresses appetite, and improves bowel movements. Drinking Fumigio Herbal Tea regularly after meals can also prevent type 2 diabetes. We encourage you to drink Fumigio Herbal Tea 3 times in a day, coupled with mild exercises to maximize its benefits. Fumigio Herbal Tea has been approved by the FDA. Toxicity test conducted by SGS, so it is safe and non-toxic. A product of Singapore. With Fumigio Herbal Tea, your peace of mind is guaranteed. Call our shop now on 0245 810 623 and set your path to good health.
Timothy die non kotu era one radio. Jumpe dietia. Timothy die non kotu era one radio. Oh, and